Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dominic Blakely, and I am the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Strategist at the J Herbert Smith Centre here at the University of New Brunswick. So this afternoon, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking with my guests here, three former students from here at the University of New Brunswick who have taken their research and built it into reality. They've gone from idea to innovation. And so their stories are fantastic. The ability to be able to translate their own ideas into viable companies is inspiring. And so I'd like them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start here to my left with Amy.
Hi, my name's Amy Andrews, and I am the CEO and co-founder of LifeTrack Safety Systems Limited, and I'm from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
Hi, I'm Sam Poirier. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Potential Motors. I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, so not too far away from there.
Well, hi, I'm Tosin Ajibola. I am co-founder and CEO at Welkom.U from Lagos, Nigeria. Pretty far away from Sam and Amy, but yeah, I'm happy to be here today.
Just slightly east of Halifax, yeah.
You know,
Slightly.
Yeah.
10,000 miles east of Halifax.
So you all went through the University of New Brunswick in some shape or another. Can you give me your educational backgrounds?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering, split between UPEI and UNB, and then I continued my studies with the Masters of Technology Management Entrepreneurship program here at UNB.
Yes, I have a similar background to Amy. I did mechanical, but focused with a mechatronics option, so I dove a bit more onto the electronics and robotics side of things. And I also did the TME program, so similar to Amy, where I did the undergrad as well as the master's, and that's really how Potential Motors got started, and I've been doing that since.
I have a computer science background with focus on technology from University in Nigeria called Babcock University. And a couple of years after, I came to Canada for my master's degree in the TME program as well. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. But you've all been engaged in various aspects of trying to develop your idea through different programs. So, you know what, let's just jump right into it. So Amy, why don't you explain to us what's LifeTrack?
LifeTrack has been a bit of a journey. So right now we're working on a mobile platform for personal safety, focused primarily on women and minorities as well. So that's where we're at now. But I started my journey back at UNB as an undergrad, working on the LifeTrack Outlast, which was a automatically inflating life jacket with built-in marine radio emergency communications.
And we know it was automatic inflation. I still remember the video of you on Global News. It wasn't you, it was one of your co-founders at the time who tried this out on air live. And I believe that was the first time it was actually tested in water.
It was a little scary.
So why don't you tell what you did with that?
Yeah, so we had built the design, made our first prototype, and we wanted to see if it would work. And it just happened to be that Global wanted to speak with us about our innovation in the commercial fishing sector. And so we said, what a great time to test our product. So, and we picked the one teammate in our group who could not swim, so not a great choice, but she was very safe in our product, and we had a lifeguard on hand. But it was a little intense waiting to see if that would inflate quickly enough to get her up.
So just to notice there, but don't do this at home. There were lifeguards around the pool, and it was done in the UNB pool. Just a quick question before we move on to Sam and his technology statement. For anybody who's watching, and if you have any questions, put them in through Q&A and Feedloop, and those can be directed at anybody here on the stage. So Sam, how about Potential Motors? Because I know there's been a lot of pivots that have taken place along the way.
Yeah. So I mean, you've been there for a lot of the journey, which has been ups and downs, as most of us have been through. So we started off in converting vehicles to electric. So we built out basically this kit that retrofitted combustion engine vehicle to electric. So you pull out the engine, put in some electronics, and got it moving. Similar story to you, Amy, where our first prototype we got finished, I think it's like 12 a.m. the night before our final presentation in school, which those things don't tend to change after high school. So we got that vehicle moving, worked on that for about 2 years, or I guess a year and a half, and then started to look at the greater change that was going on in automotive and mobility in this transition that's going on towards electrification. And the thing that we found was really interesting is that automotive as a whole has gone through this big disruption that's been brought on by electrification, connected vehicles, and autonomy that's happening. And that's kind of exhibited the first wave of electrification that's been happening on road type vehicles. And that's kind of happened. Like Tesla is a big player in that. That's come out of it. Rivian, there's other ones, and lots of investors have already made a ton of success off of that. What's next is this second wave of electrification. Like it's kind of too late to get involved in that first wave. What's next is the second wave that's going to happen, and that's going to be even wider spread than what happened on the first wave of electrification, branching out into like the off-road industry, construction, mining, agriculture, all these different areas that are going to benefit from the technology that was created in automotive, but now also have to go through this transition to electric. So, what we found interesting is that this off-road UTV recreational space is something that has to go through this transition, but the OEMs or the companies that exist in that space haven't yet made that transition to electric and don't necessarily have the skills to be able to do it yet, similar to automotive 10 years ago. So what we're working on is building out what does that technology platform for the future of off-road electric driving look like, and we're doing that through the development of our own electric UTV, which will represent what we believe this future of off-road driving to look like, as well as the technology platform that can help enable the rest of the industry to move to electric.
Excellent. And Tosin, I know your story, the pain points that the two of you were trying to solve, Amy and Sam, were a little bit more esoteric and out there. They weren't quite as personal, though there were some personal pieces. I know, Amy, some of the offshore fishers, there was a connection through family members. But Tosin, the pain point you were fixing with Welkom.U was a little bit more personal. Can you just tell me a bit about Welkom.U?
Yeah, so Welkom.U also started off based off personal experiences of myself and my co-founders, transitioning from another country, coming to Canada, and also the Atlantic side of Canada was not very popular in Nigeria. A lot of times when you hear people speak about Canada, they speak about Toronto, they speak about Vancouver, they speak about some of those metropolitan cities. And you get a lot of information from those people, and you come to Fredericton, New Brunswick, or you go to Halifax, or you go to PEI, and a lot of that information does not really tally with the life that you're living here, because, it's a different life, it's a different city, it's a closer community, right? So the expectations sometimes can be different. And with my software background of a couple guys on the team, we decided to build something that can decentralize all of that information, the essential services, the non-essential services that you can need, because every time I speak about this, I let people know that it's a brand new life, right? It's moving from your home country, everything that you've known, you've grown up to understand, the culture, you're moving into a new country, you have to understand, you have to integrate, right, to make sure that you're successful in the new country that you're at. So it was a big pain point, right, from getting an accommodation, right, you need certain documentations that you've never had in Canada before. So what we try to do is to build a bridge between any of the countries that you're coming from, and see how a lot of those things can be applicable here in Canada to help you integrate a lot quicker, right? Because you can get really frustrated, right? Because you're really excited about the new journey, but you're not sure what to expect. So what we try to do with Welkom.U is to build a digital product, right? We have our MVP right now in the beta phase to give you some of that information, give you access to some of those services even before you arrive, just to make sure that transition is a lot smoother. So, it was a big problem, and we decided to apply technology. So it's kind of software as a service. We don't have so much hardware like Potential Motors and LifeTrack. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're trying to do at Welkom.U.
That's amazing. So I see a few questions are starting to come in, and I'm going to jump to the third one on the screen because it's for all of you. So what's the biggest challenge you've faced that you weren't expecting? Let's start with Amy here on that.
Ooh, like a personal?
I'm thinking either on the personal side, or why don't we just take a look at, on the creation of LifeTrack?
Well, I guess the biggest one would be why I pivoted is probably the biggest one. So working on the automatic life jacket was a really big project for me, and I put so much time and effort into it. So when I got to a point where there was an obstacle that with regulations that got pretty complicated that I could not solve quickly enough as a startup, that I had to decide what's best for the company is to pivot and pick a different product. And that was really challenging, not only because like the technology now I'm in a like mobile platform, which is not my background, so I'm learning a lot, but also just all those connections that I've made with people and learning from them, like the reason why I was making the life jacket, right? So I had spoken with close to 100 potential customers and making that connection with them and being like, I'm finally going to make a solution to their problem. And then being, well, now I can't, or at least not in the near future. So taking that step was really challenging for me, but I'm also really glad I did, because if I had stayed and tried to push through that barrier, I think I would have exhausted all of my resources and burnt myself out and not be able to continue. So I guess the biggest challenge ended up being a really great opportunity for me as well, to be able to pivot into a new area and help a different group of customers.
Excellent. Sam?
I've definitely got a few.
The biggest.
Yeah, the biggest. So I won't go on the pivot one the same way you did, but because that was definitely a big challenge for us too. But I'd say probably one of the biggest was we spent a lot of time working in the automotive industry and focusing on where that industry specifically with on-road vehicles is going to go over the coming years, and how the core competencies that we had developed and the real value and IP that we were creating around what we're now applying to the off-road industry, how that could affect on-road vehicles and control of electric vehicles. And we spent a lot of time trying to understand product market fit and what's the timing like for on-road automotive. And the automotive industry is this massive behemoth of an industry that has, layers and layers of regulations and its own like almost government working within it around regulating everything that goes on. And then there's the whole aspect that there's this transition happening, but there's different pieces of it that need to fall into play one at a time. So electrification, autonomy, and how they kind of go one by one. So we spent a lot of time talking with different leaders within it in that industry. So like execs at Volkswagen and GM and other companies, just to understand what we're building, how is it going to provide value there, and that in itself was just a really big challenge, is going out and while we're in the middle of COVID where you can't go and travel to anywhere, is actually having these conversations and making sure that what you're building is actually going to provide value to this industry in the long term. So you're not just building technology for the sake of building technology. So that took a long time for us to figure out where we should be focusing our efforts, and that's ultimately what led us to focusing on this off-road space and this second wave of electrification, which now I'm even more excited about than what we were originally doing in on-road. So, I think that was really challenging because there's a lot of ambiguity that's associated with that, where you're just really not sure, are you doing the right thing here? And then you have a conversation and it validates it, but does it validate it enough? You have all these pieces of information that are coming in and you're trying to deal with, how do you make the best decision on how to move forward with that? And that led to us focusing on a niche to automotive, which was this off-road space.
Okay, so the biggest challenge for me and my team was pretty much around carving out that problem statement and explaining to a lot of people who haven't experienced a lot of the challenges we were trying to solve, right? Going through the problem is one thing, right? And trying to understand, what are they trying to solve? Is the problem this big? How to structure the problem and pitch and speak to people, tell people this is the problem we're trying to solve, make them really, really understand how big of an issue this can possibly be for international students, newcomers that are coming. It took a whole lot, and there's a two-side to the kind of business we have at Welkom.U. So we really have to understand the Canadian side, and we have to understand the newcomer side, and then find the middle ground where a lot of that information or where that synergy is. How do we communicate a lot of things that are acceptable here in Canada to people who haven't grown up understanding how a lot of these things are, right? So it was really that was one of the biggest problems we faced, trying to make sure that the two sides that we're trying to deal with really understand the value that we're trying to bring, the problem that we're trying to solve. And I mean, it's a very regulated space as well. So we had to do a lot of research, reach out to a lot of people. I mean, at the very early stages of Welkom.U, we were really excited about certain things, but when you dive deep into the details, you understand there's certain things you just can't do, right? Even if you have the ability to do them at a particular point, you have to go through several regulations, you need to get even licenses and quite a number of those things. So from a very high level, when we were conceptualizing the idea, we're excited about it, but when we started to walk down the details, break it down into different bits and pieces of what we had to do, it got really challenging. But the good part about it is, and why we stuck with it, is because it was a personal story, it was a personal experience, and we really, really wanted to make sure that people who are coming behind us have it a lot easier than we did.
Excellent. So I'm going to move to some individual questions here that I've seen that come up. So first I'm going to go to Sam. The question here is, are the electric engines powerful enough for serious off-roading?
It's a great question that I think we get a lot when you think about electric in the off-road. And what's interesting is that, you don't equate electric with the same power that you might get out of a combustion engine, but if you actually dive into the power that is within an electric motor, it's pretty incredible. Like, really, I would say that if you look into the details, the specifications of motors that exist today, like the actual power to weight ratio that you can get for a motor relative to an engine is pretty impressive. So I mean, for example, one of the motors that we'll use is literally like this size. Like, I can hold it in one hand and lift it up, and it has the same power as my Mazda 3 would, for example, which is pretty incredible. Yeah. And the other thing is, in off-road, often you're really looking at torque as a big indicator, because you're trying to do these types of scenarios where you hit a face where it's maybe very short, but you're going straight up for a couple seconds, or you're hitting a rock that you need to get over and you need to have the torque to be able to lift the vehicle that up and over that. So in those types of scenarios, an electric motor actually has more advantages than a combustion engine, because of the fact that you have that instant torque that can work right in the moment, which is fantastic. Where there are challenges is around the battery consumption and heat associated with a battery and power usage in these off-road scenarios. So that's why I think as electric makes it into off-road, we're going to find it in specific areas first. Like, it's going to be in trail riding and certain types of less intense scenarios compared to racing around the dunes, for example, because the power consumption that's associated with that is just a lot higher than what I believe, at least right now, is a really good use case for an electric UTV. So it'll find its niche similar to what happened in on-road automotive and kind of slowly branch out as the technology evolves.
Excellent. Next question is going to be for Tosin. How did you make sure that the platform adapted to different communities in Canada?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, and we're still in that process, actually. But the easiest way was to go to those different communities, right, to find out what was acceptable and not make any assumptions or any guesses. So we done a lot of research speaking with the different communities, and of course, because of the size of the team right now, we looked at the top 5 countries where immigrants come from today, and we decided to tackle it based off the ranking of those communities. So the first 5, once we fully understand how to operate in those markets, those regions, those different communities, we move on to the next group of people. So it was pretty much talking to these people to we try not to make any assumptions and understand what exactly is applicable in your community, what is your culture like, just being very open-minded to learning so much from the guys. And I mean, it has also been a great experience for me, right? Because I lived most of my life in Nigeria, related with a lot of Nigerians, did some work as well in East Africa, related with some of those people. But coming to Canada, I related with people from all over the world, right? Learning about different cultures, different people. So that's pretty much how we did it, speaking to people. We had to get out of our shells, and thankfully the TME program was built for that, and it got us talking to people. And I mean, we kind of got to a very good comfort level, and we're happy to speak to any communities that need help, any communities that we think this will be of value to. We have no problem approaching them with the right questions, right open-ended questions to make sure that we get as much information that can help us enhance and build what we're building to assist.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
And Amy, for you, the question is, how do you think LifeTrack helps people the most?
Good question. So right now we have our beta that's out on the Apple Store, which is quite exciting. So it's only
Congratulations.
thank you. It's only been out for a little bit, but we have pretty good engagement rates so far, considering how much publicity we really haven't got enough of our marketing out yet. But right now it's really just crowdsourcing information. So right now people can anonymously put in different incidents that they've seen. So whether it's something that they think other people should know. So like an example here, I can't remember exactly how many points we have, but it's just a pinpoint on the map where I can see geographically where it happened. I can press that point and then it tells me the incident that occurred, what time, what date, how the person felt, and what actions might have been taken. So I know for me, I actually check it before I go out now, and just in case something's happened. And I have seen other people putting in incidents. So really it's made for people to get a general idea of what the safety is like in their community. So once again, beta stages, but so far we've got really good reviews back from people.
That's fantastic. Now, one of the questions we knew was going to come up here, and I'm actually going to combine two together, but I want short answers. It's going to be hard. We talked about this one outside before. So what advice do you have for people trying to start their own business? And you can't give the answer I gave. And what skills helped you most as innovators and entrepreneurs?
That's a really good question.
So, and I'm going to go to Tosin first.
Oh, I'm last, darn it. Okay.
Oh, you might not be last. You never know.
So I'd say it's the people skills as innovators, because I mean, innovation is just trying to see how best you can enhance something that probably already exists, see how best you can offer more value. And the only way is to speak to people and understand people, the market you're going into, the segment you're going into, to see how best, what do people really want. I mean, something that's stuck very closely to me throughout my entrepreneurship journey is you might have a really great idea, right? But you need to make sure that the people who are going to use your service, the people who are going to pay you for the value you're bringing to them, are happy with that product or that service that you're bringing to them. So understanding your customer segment is one of the biggest skills that you need when you're talking about innovation, when you're trying to build something in the market. Because I mean, you can't pay yourself, right? So you need to make sure that you're able to relate with that customer segment, that niche that you've carved out. You need to make sure that you can relate very much with that niche, and then build your product based off the need.
Excellent. Amy.
Nice. So yeah, Tosin definitely talked on empathy. That's the biggest one for me. But I guess I'll kind of combine it. So the advice would be opposite of what you said before. Just do it.
Yeah.
Because I was one of those people who planned everything to the T, but maybe never actually did something about it. So I got pushed out of my comfort zone through TME as well, and just started taking actions. Don't get me wrong, I still planned, but just not to the same level, and actually started making those conversations happen faster. And that helped me out a lot. So I guess skill-wise, it's hard because I was going to talk about that, because engineering, you don't always get those people skills. But I would have to say kind of project management, honestly. So learning that skill and being able to plan out completely what I want, like having the end goal in mind and being able to break that down into smaller components, is the thing that's made me the most successful, because you can do it in every aspect of your company. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Excellent. Sam.
Yeah, I'd say one point to maybe add on to those two, or I'll add mine, is like one of my mentors always say, good things happen when you're at the right place at the right time. So just be at more places at more times, more good things will happen. So to that point of like speaking to people and being open for advice and everything, I think that's super, super valuable, just going out. And the amount of conversations we've had with incredible people just from sending a LinkedIn message or something, it's incredible the type of people who will get back to you because they've been through this journey and just want to be able to get back. But I guess the one point I would add is that's a bit different is like I think you find something that you really enjoy to be able to sink all of this time into, because whatever you do, it's not going to be super easy. You're going to have to love what you're doing to be able to get the way through, and it's also going to be a lot easier to be able to attract other people to what you're doing if you're actually passionate about it. You're going to want to spend the time on the side looking into things, and you know, the littlest things will captivate you if you really do enjoy the thing that you're working on. So I think that it's important to, you know, there can be this business goal and this idea you're going to make money out of this thing or whatever, but you're really not going to feel like it's worth it unless you're actually working on something you really enjoy.
Excellent. So I want to build on that with one of the questions here. And we sort of talked about the up and the positive sides of startups and innovation and that entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurial journey that you're all on and you've all taken for years now. But with the upside comes the downside, and with that comes sacrifices. So what kind of sacrifices did you have to make to be able to get to where you are today? We're going to start with Tosin this time.
I mean, it's a really great question, and I mean, it's the part that I really wasn't told about before I started. So, but there's certain things that you probably have to give up. I really loved basketball growing up. I played basketball 8 days a week. But I mean, with this, I had to give up certain things, right? I had to dedicate more time, right? I had to read books and make sure that I understand that it's not a sprint, right? It's kind of a marathon. So you don't expect immediate results, and not every step you put into the project or the startup or the company might give you positive results. Some of them might be learning experiences. I mean, I think it was in TMU again, one of the speakers that came said, no means next opportunity, right? So a lot of times that we heard, no, oh, I'm sorry, this is not possible. We didn't take it as a negative. We took it, most of those things, as lessons, right? So a lot of the downsides is had to commit way more time, right? But it also speaks to what Sam said. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So every single time that I feel discouraged, I feel down, I remember why I'm doing this. And I mean, it kind of just fuels that drive. And I mean, we've had times where we had different builds and they didn't work as they were supposed to work, right? There were those
Glitches in the programming.
Oh yes, there were those glitches as well, and you write a bunch of codes and then you have so many triangles.
Nothing like a live demo.
Yeah, we had a lot of those things, but it was just a learning experience, and a lot of those mistakes are mistakes that I probably would never make again, right? So you need to have that mindset that a lot of those slopes, those times that you go down, are preparing you better for the future. A lot of those downtimes that you're having are things that you probably would just get through with a snap of a finger the next time you have that kind of problem. So yeah.
Sam, what have you had to sacrifice to get to where you are?
Yeah, I'd say I'd relate a lot on some of the first points there. Like, you definitely have to change your lifestyle a bit around it, I would say. I mean, it depends on the stage, and I feel like these things kind of go in waves where you have a ton going on, and then it'll slow down a little bit, and then the wave picks back up again. So I mean, that's a big part of it. I think one thing though is that you really got to, like I've had to, and I think everybody on our team, you have to realize that, you know, very quickly you're not able to do everything that you're working on. Like, you start off at the beginning and you're kind of just doing everything, and it's so fun because you're touching everything and you're working on it all, and then all of a sudden you get to the stage where, you know, it's definitely grown beyond that being possible, and you have to let go of different pieces and realize what are the things that you're actually good at and that you're going to provide value to the growing team in the long term. And that's something we've certainly experienced, or I've certainly experienced over the last, I guess, year and a half, where we've grown the team. Like now we've gone from the last 2 years from a team of just 4 people working on it to 20 people now, lots of outside advisors and consultants and things like that. And in that time, you really have to let go of lots of parts of the business and figure out what it is that you're actually going to be able to provide value on in the long term.
Well, that was really relatable, both of those. So I was a little bit of a control freak when I started out on it because I worked on it alone for quite a bit, as you may know. So once I was growing the team and had to delegate tasks, I found that incredibly hard.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess sacrifice-wise, the biggest one for me is that I kind of put off going out into industry like many of my friends did. So seeing them live the life that I expected to, versus me working. I did have some funding for a while, but for quite a while I was not getting paid. So living without a salary is quite challenging. But at the same time, like it's been brought up before, I absolutely love doing it. So it wasn't an issue for me to go into work and do it because I'd like to do it unpaid, that's fine. Love to be paid for it though. But it's one of those things that I was willing to give that up to make a lot of strides with the company, which not everyone's willing to do. So that's a really big, like, realistic thing that's like, you need to have a backup plan for that. So I've had to do that as well. But yeah, sacrificing a salary was challenging.
So there's 2 questions that are standing out here on the screen for me. The first one I'm going to go to in realizing the audience that we're speaking to. What courses did you take? How did they actually shape your career today? And this can be secondary or post-secondary. Are there any in particular? I mean,
I could start maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say there's a few that would have big impact, and they'd all have the same kind of structure to them. They're all project-based, where you actually get to work on something where you kind of have to take ownership from the start to finish of a project and actually go to completion. So, one that comes to mind is we had mechatronics program or project where we had to build like literally just like a laser tank. It's like seems like kind of a silly project where you're going around, you're shooting other tanks and stuff, which is super fun. But you go through the process of actually having to map out like the full design of where you want to get to at the end, sourcing of different components, like everything, and then the software side too, like all the different pieces that kind of go into that. And then there's other courses like in TME, for example, that kind of expand on that, where you have to think about how does this actually fit into a business. So I think for me, probably those project-based courses where you have to work with people, it's not just yourself, and you actually have to demonstrate something at the end. Those are really valuable and directly feed into day-to-day work, I think, anywhere. It's not just starting a company.
Amy?
I would have to agree with the project-based, like specific courses like product design and development, which is undergrad as well as grad. That was a huge course for me, both of them. But like, I guess going back to like mechanical engineering, it's a lot of very technical stuff, given a problem, get a solution kind of thing. And then when I took my first TME course, it was quality management in the undergrad. And that was the moment for me. It was like an aha moment where I was like, this is the kind of stuff I want to learn about. Because I found engineering, while very interesting, to me, it lacked the compassion. Like I didn't have that people part. So once I got a taste of seeing what I could be doing to help with the quality of a product or all of the other things, I guess, what we cover in there, that was it for me, where I realized that there was an avenue for me, because I always felt like I didn't fit into engineering properly. So I always like design projects because it's creative, it's fun, you're solving problems. But when you work with like outside groups, so like I know most of my design was in UPEI, but we always had a community partner we worked with. So I was working with an actual organization and solving their problem, which I really loved. So when I got here and saw that the TME 4025 product development and design let me choose what I'm working on, I immediately attached to that project and wanted to do the best I could in it for myself as well as the customers. So I guess, yeah, it was the combination of technical and people that really got me excited and pushed me to where I am now.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with both of them. And so after my undergrad, I worked with a technology and fintech company, financial technology company in Nigeria, and that kind of gave me a head start to seeing firsthand how products were built, actually how products were scoped, right? How they were built and how they were delivered and how different people were using them as well. So coming into TME with that experience and now taking the quality management course, the product design, the marketing as well, and a lot of those pieces all started coming together because I was very particular and happy about building a product, but what to do with that product after it was being built was something I didn't have so much knowledge of because I worked on the product team and I didn't have to do anything around marketing. I didn't have to do anything around sales. I just felt the people who use those things came to meet us to pick up those projects off the shelf. So seeing all the different aspects and all the different things that come together to making a product a successful product, the customer relation, and a lot of those things that we had were the things that were the courses that kind of helped me out because I was just on the engineering side and write a bunch of code to see it work, and you're happy. Who's going to use it? I didn't know how to. So I'll say for me, it was more around how to get a lot of the things that you're building out there, all the knowledge that I gained through the marketing workshops, sales, and a lot of those things were the most important courses that's helped us today.
That's interesting. So it's those soft skills, or what people describe as soft skills, because you have the technical competencies that are part and parcel of who you are. There was one question that just popped up, and this is, I mean, it's got me wanting to ask it written all over it, because it's about networking. And networking, as you all know, because you've been my students, is critical, I feel. But how did you network during COVID? I'm going to start with Amy on this one.
I'm trying to think. I guess the biggest way I did it was I went into so many accelerators. Like I did quite a few in a very short amount of time because you couldn't meet people face to face, and I wanted to find a way that I could develop the company but also build that network. So because of COVID, it actually allowed me to be in accelerators I couldn't have been. So I was in some in PEI as well as Nova Scotia and Fredericton as well. So it really helped me expand, especially at the time working on a life jacket. I was able to speak to coastal communities and got a lot more new connections that way. So like one example, I was in the PEI startup zone, and one of the ladies that was in that course as well, her family were all fishermen. So I easily was able to I found at least 25 new connections that I was able to speak to because of her. So yeah, I guess I just took advantage of what I saw around me, free accelerators, and I had the time to do them. So yeah, I guess.
Okay, I can go next. I'd say it was pretty much the same thing. And so in as much as COVID had the whole downsides and everything, but it kind of brought the world into a smaller place, right? So I was able to participate in incubators, accelerators, different programs from groups in Toronto that would have expected you to be there in person, groups in Halifax as well. So that kind of helped out with networking as well, and spent a whole lot of time on LinkedIn, right? Spent a whole lot of time on LinkedIn just connecting, meeting people, and everybody was open to talk virtually, right? People didn't go to your profile to see, he's Far East, probably won't get the chance to ever meet him. Like, people were connecting and people were happy to just set up Zoom calls, Google Meet, whatever the case was. So it was actually a lot easier because, I was behind the camera, right? So I was actually even more comfortable. And then now a lot of things are opening up, go out to some events in person. And I remember people that I connected with virtually. I'm like, oh, hi, Tosin. And so that kind of helped out, just looking for people who kind of have the same goals or have walked in the same spaces that you're trying to go into, and connecting with them. Shouldn't just, I think Sam mentioned this earlier as well, just dropping a quick message and having those conversations.
Sam, what about for you?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting because we basically grew our team through COVID.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that I literally hadn't met until this year that I've been working online with for, months, if not, 2 years now. So, 2 weeks ago I went and I did a trip to Toronto and Detroit, and there I met with one of the guys that we had worked with for over a year and a half now and are doing almost daily calls with never met him in person. And I was like, wow, you're taller than I expected. So
Yeah, you're
that
this
part-
tall on a Zoom screen, right? I mean,
yeah, that part is weird, but it's also, to Tosin's point, I mean, it opens up the whole world to you. Like, I think there may have been a bit more reservation about doing an online call or just talking to somebody across the world before this happened, and especially like auto industry and looking place like Germany, it's all very in-person culture, and that completely changed once this happened. So it opened up all of those places for you to actually reach out and talk to those different people. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn for like more of the business side and that type of people for generally, but we also found really interesting people looking at like research papers and PhD papers. Yeah, so I mean, one guy that we've worked with for 2 years now, haven't met him in person, we found just by reading like old PhD papers from him from 20 years ago, and they were related to our subject, and said, hey, read your paper, super interesting, I think it relates to what we're working on, would love to chat and meet up, and people are really open to talking. If you're working on an idea, it's clear that you're kind of earlier stage and you're literally asking for help, then a lot of people are open to that. And I'd say the other thing that helps too is having some sort of an ask, in a sense, to be able to go to them with and be able to say, hey, we're looking for an advisor, or we're looking for a consultant to work with us. And like advisor is super easy. Hey, we're looking for people to help us on this by giving some advice. Like, it's just an easier way to say, rather than just saying, hey, do you want to chat? So I think there's ways that you can kind of sculpt that first message outwards to try to engage them a little bit more. But I'd say, yeah, just talk to more people. It's opened up the world to us.
So these are all great questions, and of course we can't get to all of them, but we're going to try. The next one I'm going to ask, I want to preface it because it's about inspiration. So I want you to think about this, but I also wanted to say something, that the three of you are actually my inspiration, because you are walking the walk, and you are young people that are taking ideas that you've developed, that you own, and you're pushing this out. And I teach entrepreneurs every day, but the three of you and your classmates and your companies and your teams are truly my inspiration. I want to thank you for that. What's your inspiration? What was your inspiration to start your companies? What's your inspiration to keep pushing your companies forward? So we're going to start with Amy.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to lie. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. That was not the goal. Never. I did not think that was going to happen. And then I took the product design and development course and quickly saw that it had everything I was looking for. It combined the technology as well as the problem solving with that like more empathetic side. So for me, the second I saw that I could make a positive impact in the world, in whatever means I chose, basically, that really got me excited. I don't know, I've always just looked for ways to help people, and this was a way I could help a lot of people at once. So it makes it very real once you speak to that first person. Because before that, it's like, oh, I'm just solving a problem that I've made up in my mind, and then I'm trying to give like just an answer, like on a test or something. But the second that you're like, okay, this is an idea I have based on research, I go out and speak to them and learn from them, because the first idea we came up with as a group was not great. We got a lot of really bad feedback from different commercial fishers, and we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, so clearly we were in the wrong area for that pain point. So really just digging deep and asking the right questions to the right people. And like was said before, the more people you talk to, the more places you're at, the more opportunities that come. And I guess for me, it was exciting because the end goal is helping people, but there's all these amazing opportunities on the way for you to grow as well. So I guess that's my inspiration. Yeah.
Sam?
Yeah, I think it started, I've always been super passionate about environment, and I said I grew up in Halifax, but I kind of grew up all over the place, like in Africa and the Middle East for a while, and you see lots of really beautiful places, and you definitely want to preserve that over time. So, I've always been passionate about that, and then while I was living in Germany for a summer, I had started seeing all of this stuff of how electrification is basically just, it's happening. There's in Germany especially, there's bans that are coming into play affecting 13 million on-road vehicles that were no longer going to be able to be driven because they were just gas or diesel vehicles. So it became very real that this transition is happening in our lifetimes, and it's going to happen very quickly. And I very much want to be a part of helping that transition to happen in whatever way I can. So I think that kind of started as inspiration, but now it's really seeing other people who are doing this stuff. Like you mentioned, being in different accelerator programs and things like that. Having a conversation with somebody else who's working the same struggle, and you see them being successful in different ways, or even just saying that they're having the same struggles that you are. Like honestly, it's pretty inspiring to continue doing what you're doing, because you are going to get past those hurdles and things like that.
So I think for me it was also with my first job right out of my undergraduate degree, and it was a financial technology company that was trying to provide financial inclusion to a lot of people, access to payments, and I saw a lot of people struggle to make payments, to collect payments, even just as easy as using a debit card, getting their debit cards, and a lot of those things. And I saw how much value the products we built brought to those lives. I saw how happy a lot of people were, and that was pretty much it for me. I figured this is something, bringing value to people, right, gives me even more joy than getting paid for it at some point. So that was pretty much my inspiration. And then with Welkom.U, it kind of grew exponentially, because I see a lot of people, even right now, coming to the country clueless on what to expect. And you point them in the right direction, and they're extremely grateful. You get a text every single day, I'm not sure what I would have done, how I would have achieved this, and you get a lot of those stories, and you just feel fulfilled doing what you're doing. So I think for me, and I'm grateful for it, is that the inspiration is continuous. One very recent story is a first-year student at UMB. She came here all by herself at 18. She stayed at a hotel for about 3 weeks. She didn't go to class. She was crying. She didn't know who to speak to, what to do. It was really tough. And my co-founder and I, Ife, we went to pick her up from the hotel. She was really grateful. There was nowhere for her to stay at the time. We had her over at our house for a week until we found a place for her, took her to school. And it was just a great moment for us. And that's pretty much where the inspiration comes from, because Michael, the other co-founder, came to class with his boxes. He didn't know where else to go, so he dragged his suitcases all the way to class, right? So those are the things that keep us going, even when it gets really tough. Those are the problems that we're trying to solve. Seeing that people don't go through a lot of those things bring inspiration to us every day.
That's incredible. Such inspiring stories about inspiration. So one of the first questions that was asked, and it kind of fits in, and you can see sort of the thematic movement through here. How do you ensure? You're busy. This is not, as you said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and this isn't a 9-to-5 job. And the fact that the three of you didn't laugh when I said that is, but how do you ensure you have a good work-life balance? Your health is important. Your ability to be able to keep moving and not to finish it today. How do you prevent burnout?
Okay.
Those are easy questions, right? Come on.
It's tough not to get caught up in what you're doing, especially if you love what you're doing. You find yourself spending hours and days just doing what you want to do, especially the COVID year. I had, I think, a 2-3 week stretch that I didn't step out of the door in my house, and that was not healthy at all. And I think the wellness course that we took with Rachel Clark at TME, it kind of opened up my eyes and to paying attention to yourselves, because if you don't take care of yourself, right, you almost can't bring as much value that you're trying to build, right? You just keep going halfway and halfway and halfway, getting burnt out. So taking out time to do certain things that you love, spending time with family, and just making sure that that is not your life, right? One of my mentors, which I probably was the same guy that told you about being more places myself.
Yeah, yeah.
He mentioned separating your identity from the business, because there was you first before that company, right? So you have to make sure that you still keep those values as yourself, the things you love to do. You have to find time to make yourself happy, right, while trying to build it. So it's a continuous thing. You have to continue reminding yourself, put different things in place, periodic things. Maybe I play basketball every Thursday, or I go to the beach every Friday, or whatever the case is. You just have to make really conscious effort not to get locked into just that value of that company and giving all that sacrifice, because you need some of that refreshment too as well to reset and refuel yourself to make sure that you're good enough to, or you're at the point whereby you're doing best for that company.
Sam, how do you maintain that life balance? How do you work-life balance? How do you avoid burnout?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. So, I guess there's a few pieces to play into it. So, there's money side, financial freedom, availability. There's like your physical self, health in general, and then there's, family and friends and things like that. And I feel like if any one of those starts to drop off, then the other ones start to fail as well. So it's kind of this constant juggle of balancing all of these things, especially when you're doing a startup. You kind of have limited time for any of those. You're not really getting paid a whole lot. You don't have time to spend with family, and you probably don't have a ton of time to work out or anything either. So I don't know, I've since the beginning very much had a focus on, like, for me, I just can't focus as much throughout the day. Like, I know that is a fact. If I don't have a good balance in terms of getting some physical activity in throughout the week in some form. I can be short, like a 15 or 20 minute run on the day, just to get the blood pumping. But like, I can see it. I feel like the longer you work and understand the way that you work, the more you kind of notice these things about yourself. So unfortunately, I feel like it takes a bit of time to identify what these things are. But for me, that's one of them. And it's just knowing, I should just stop what I'm doing because I'm not effective. Like, there's times where you'll notice that you'll spend 2 hours on something when it could take 30 minutes.
Yeah,
so it's realizing when those times are, and not just forcing yourself to push through it because you're like, I'm going to get this done and I'm putting in the extra hours. And it's like, no, I should probably just stop, go work out, and then, or go spend time with family, and then tomorrow I'll get back at it and do it in half the time. So I think that's been really important for me, is just identifying when you're actually efficiently working versus you're just working for the sake of working. And that starts to open up ways to be able to spend time in those areas.
And finally, Amy.
I guess mine's like a combo of the two. I'm still not great at it, but I'm getting better at it. One thing I have not allowed to be taken away from me is I love to coach and play rugby. So that's one thing that I always make time for. Still working on how to make that time. It's a bit of a juggle, but that's just one thing that I know when I go there, I am completely removed from the company, from any type of work, and I can just focus on rugby and having fun, and it's social, physical, mental. It's just a break for everything. So that's one thing that really works for me. And then I also use like a Sunday reset. So I use that one day of the week to prepare myself for success for the rest of the week, because without that, it's just chaos the rest of the week if I'm not prepared. But I just concisely, I guess that's how I focus on keeping myself balanced.
Well, listen, I want to thank the three of you very much. You've been listening to some great stories from Amy Andrews, CEO and co-founder of LifeTrack, from Sam Poirier, who is the CEO and co-founder of Potential Motors, and from Tosin Ajibola, who is the CEO and co-founder of Welkom.U. They've taken their ideas, they've innovated, they've taken the research, and it's made it reality. And congratulations to you. Thanks so much for sharing your stories. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right.